Well, ladies and gentlemen, in another one of the brilliant intellectual outbursts of absolute creativity that this show is so well known for, we'd like to present to you a very, very special right angle today. Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Ott. We hope those of you who are inclined to the vapors are sitting down, and if you have a weak heart, perhaps you might want to turn the volume down and have a younger person explain to you. Because today, brace yourselves, we're going to do a look back at the year 2016. I know we're pretty much ahead of the pack on all that, but since it's a political show and since it's the three of us, instead of just a running recap of 2016, anno horribilis, according to so many people, I'd like to ask my two partners here, Steve and Scott, what their best political moment and their worst political moment was during what was, we can at least all agree, a pretty turbulent year. Steve, do you remember having a moment that was just like, this is the pits, this is bad, and it didn't get worse than that?
You know, it was such a roller coaster year. It really was, and I thought maybe one of my pit moments was anything during the GOP primary progress when I watched good guy after good guy just tumble to Donald Trump, who I just didn't trust yet. He just didn't have the track record there for me to trust him. But no, it turned out my worst moment was very late in the game this year. It was Obama's shameful abstention at the United Nations, one of their routine anti-Israel votes. And always, the United States has vetoed these things to protect our only natural ally in the entire Middle East. And out of a fit of pique, a personal bias against Bibi Netanyahu and his just sheer hatred for everything decent in the world, Barack Obama had Samantha Powers abstain. This thing went through, and so now Israeli settlers can be convicted by international courts or whatever. They're declared non-persons in their own Jewish quarter of Jerusalem. It's been called the Jewish quarter for I think 1,000 years, and now they're unpersons according to the UN in the Jewish quarter. And the most dangerous part is, the United Nations was always a safe outlet for Europe's anti-Semitism. The British, the French, whoever they could vote against Israel, get out their anti-Semitism, safe in the assumption that we would put a stop to that nonsense. And instead, Barack Obama and Samantha Powers have enabled anti-Semitism in the United Nations and Europe, and it's just the low point of a turbulent year.
What about you, Scotty? Was there a moment when you went, ooh?
I feel like I've been doing that all year. On the other hand,
me too.
I've got this great gift. I don't know, it may be something that needs to be diagnosed, but I have a really difficult time remembering bad things. I remember some highlights in my life, but I have very few lowlights. But, I could, like when you said, what the best thing you can remember, I'll hold off on that for a second, but immediately something came to mind. But when you said the worst thing, I was like, there was just kind of this nagging, ongoing dissension between people who would otherwise be allies.
I agree with that.
And I just felt like the whole year, for me, until I got to the point, and I couldn't put a date on it, but until I got to the point where I thought, I don't know if this is the Republican Party that I thought I was joining when I joined the Republican Party. It just got to the point where I just thought, is there anybody who can have a civil dialogue? Is there anybody who can disagree agreeably? Is it possible that we can actually, talk about our principles without being shouted down? And now that I think about it, I remember I actually was attacked on Twitter, if you call that an attack, by somebody who was posting homosexual pornography pictures. And
I remember that
yes,
guy.
Yeah. And suggesting that I ought to commit suicide, and taking it a little bit beyond that was basically suggesting that if I wasn't willing to do it, there are others who could do it for me. I called the FBI.
Good for you.
I've never done that before. I mean, I've been doing political commentary for a long time, and I've never felt like somebody was making a direct threat on my life. Of course, the FBI basically said, I don't know. I think actually they said they would initiate an investigation, and then they called it off, and then they restarted it again. No, I'm just kidding. They didn't do that. But it was that was pretty awful. So whenever that date was, which I can't recall, that date that I actually picked up the phone and dialed the local office of the FBI, that was pretty terrible.
So they basically said this Marcos Melitsos guy, whoever was posting these things, no real threat to you. Mine is pretty clear. I remember for most of the year saying that James Comey is going to come to Loretta Lynch with charges, and then the question would be whether or not Lynch wanted to prosecute them or not. But Comey was going to come in with a big case and with charges. And when James Comey announced that after an hour of convicting Hillary Clinton of all of these horrible crimes, said, but we're not going to be pursuing charges, and we don't see how any reasonable prosecutor could. I still don't know what that code language means completely, but that was, without question, the low point of the year, because that's when I began to realize that the rule of law does not apply in this country anymore. And it certainly did not. I mean, the evidence was just so overwhelming with the emails and the Clinton Foundation, everything looked like she was just going to walk again. But as it turns out, the worst moment I had in 2016 is connected to the best moment I had in 2016. So, Steve, what about you? Anything leap out at you in terms of like, yeah, man?
Yeah, my best moment is really, really easy to pick out. You know, in June and July, I started my Wargaming the Electoral College series at vodkaputtit.com. And by July, Virginia, Colorado, and Nevada had all firmed up so hard for Clinton that the only road I saw for Trump to win the White House was to go through the Rust Belt, through Pennsylvania, through Ohio, through maybe even Michigan and Wisconsin. And the poll numbers just weren't shoring up for him in any of those states except for Ohio, and it just wasn't enough. And I thought, gosh, it has to be this northern route to victory. It has to be, and it just wasn't happening. And then on election night, when we started getting returns from Pennsylvania, I knew it. If a Republican is gonna win Pennsylvania, he's gonna carry one or two, maybe three of those other states with him. And sure enough, he did. And by about 10 o'clock, my friend Sarah Hoyt, the science fiction author, she calls and says, "I can't stand the suspense anymore. We have to come over and drink with you." And so Sarah and her family came, and seeing him at the door, and all of us kind of sitting around the fireplace with our cocktails, watching the results come in from Michigan, was just, it was the highlight of my year, Bill.
Absolutely. What about you, Scott?
The most positive moment is, and I forget exactly what had happened to make me think this, but was the moment when I thought, hey, Scott Walker actually has a shot at this.
Well...
And it was pretty early, as you might imagine, in the process, because I've been a long-time admirer of Scott Walker. We've done some shows on him in the past. We knew what he went through in Wisconsin. We knew how that he had fought, back the political machine there and had successfully withstood like 4 elections or 3 elections in 4 years or something like that. Anyway, and I just thought, and I remember looking at the whole field and thinking, well, these are all pretty good guys for the most part, and gal, but man, if we could finally come around to nominating a guy like Scott Walker, who's got a proven record at doing this, I felt great about that. And I'm going to cling to that feeling. I'm just going to forget everything that's happened since then and just still remember this is the party that almost might have nominated Scott Walker had he done a lot better. Well,
we always knew you were a bitter clinger, Scott.
That's right. You and your guns and your religion. My favorite moment, you might think, was the election night win. But it wasn't, because the election night win happened so slowly. Trump's win over election night was like having Novocaine wear off after the dentist, Yeah. You knew it was going to happen, and yet no one would call it. We sat there for 2 hours waiting for some network to have the guts to finally say, no, he's president. And so it wasn't that, although I was delighted. I think my favorite moment was either the next day or the day after that. Whenever I heard the news about how Hillary Clinton took election night, because when Hillary Clinton walked from the FBI investigations and all of this isn't just corruption, guys. This is absolute treason. I mean, this is simply treason, and national secrets just in Anthony Weiner's laptop computer, and all of the Clinton Foundation. Yeah, well, you can buy the United States influence for low price of $7 million. I was so outraged. I think I got into this work because of my sense of justice. And I was so outraged and so despairing of the future of this country that when Hillary lost the election, I was happy. But when I heard that Hillary lost the election, was throwing things around, had expected to win right up until about 7 or 8 o'clock at night, that she was cursing, that she was probably blind drunk, she physically assaulted Podesta. I believe all this is true. I really do, because there's been a long history of this kind of thing.
If it isn't, it should be.
I believe it. And even if all those details aren't true, I know this is not the kind of noble sentiment that we should be emulating here, but I thought justice for this woman has arrived. Yeah. Justice has arrived. It's arrived in that nothing worse could have happened to Hillary Clinton. If Hillary Clinton had gone to jail prior to the election, the way I thought she should have, she would have been a martyr, and she could have always claimed, well, I would have won the election. But she didn't. She didn't win the election. She lost it. And she lost it to a guy who everybody in the left side of the aisle was saying this is the most winnable election in the history of the United States of America. So she lost an election twice, and her career of treason and corruption are over, and they're over in a spectacular way. And she can't even walk off the stage decently without constantly stirring up a little bit more mud. I'm part of the recounts. I'm going to be part of this and part of that. Nope, you're done. You're out of here. Go away. I don't want to see you anymore. That was absolutely my high point of the year. Not because I'm a mean guy who doesn't like people, but because justice means an awful lot to me. And there was karmic justice in not just her loss, but in her reaction to her loss. We're not going to fire off the fireworks, and we're not going to have the $700,000 glass ceiling come crashing down. Hillary, we didn't vote for you because we're a woman. People voted for you. People treated you the way you claimed you always wanted to be treated, as a just like a male politician. That's what you got. We just don't like you very much. So there you go. And that essentially is the true story of 2016, a year which will go into the record books we all knew was going to be very, very emotionally up and down, but which, in retrospect, if for no other reason than the loss of power of the mainstream news media and just the simple throwing a monkey wrench into this endless progressive march to the social workers' paradise, it's going to go down as a very eventful year in America. And if we continue to do the work that we're doing, hopefully we'll be able to look back and say that was the turning point year in our lives, in our view of America. In any event, yes. Oh, fingers crossed. I'm sorry.
Fingers crossed. That was it.
We couldn't have done any of this throughout 2016 without the paying members at BillWhittle.com. Right. If you're one of those people, we're enormously grateful. And if you're not, then we'd love to have you become one. We've got a lot of work to do because we do mean to make sure that this is turning a corner and not just a speed bump. So we will see all of you next year in 2017. Again, thank you for your support, your consideration, your kindness, and your tolerance, your patience all throughout 2016. And I think every one of us thinks that next year is going to be an awful lot better. Feels just a little bit like America again.